everyone, my name is Kayla Roach. Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to create your own moss propagation box. Since there won't be many animals shown in this video, since it's a video about moss, I decided I would make up for it by wearing this very cute frog hoodie. You're welcome. Propagating your own moss is very convenient if... Let's try that again. Don't do that. Propagating your own moss is very convenient if you keep reptiles or amphibians because you can resort to that moss if you're making vivarium builds. Plants are a big part of what make their enclosures so lush and realistic and enriching. Or if you're just bored and you want to watch moss grow and feel like a god who has this little tiny natural kingdom upon you, then you can also do that. First, you'll need to acquire some moss. You can either purchase the exact species you want, or you can go harvest some yourself. Moss is a very hardy plant that will grow almost anywhere that has enough moisture. You can find it carpeting across the forest floor, on rocks and branches, and even on buildings and in cracks and crevices between paved surfaces. It's important to follow a certain etiquette and be mindful while harvesting your moss. When grabbing a clump of moss, be sure to only take a small amount to prevent the depletion of the patch you're removing from. It's better to grab multiple small portions from different locations rather than completely removing an entire patch of moss. Once you've acquired the moss, it's a good idea to soak it in order to rinse off any dirt, rocks, and hitchhikers. While soaking my moss, I discovered this tiny little spider. This is a species of crab spider. They're named after crabs because they move in a very similar manner. The enlarged bulbs at the end of this spider's pedipalps indicate that it's a male. After spending a fair amount of time admiring this little spider, I released it back outside. Now let's get back to the regularly scheduled episode and make the propagation box itself. I used a 12-quart Sterilite storage tote. You'll want to make sure that the storage tote you use is transparent in order to allow light to penetrate through the plastic. First, I created a drainage layer using Hydroton. The drainage layer serves as a place for excess water to accumulate rather than staying stagnant in the substrate above. Hydroton was my material of choice, but there are many others that work just as effectively. Some examples are lava rock, gravel, or even perlite. Next, I cut a piece of fiberglass window screen to the appropriate size. This will serve as a barrier to prevent the substrate from falling down into the drainage layer. Next, I added a small layer of horticultural wood charcoal. Not only will this material directly benefit the soil and the moss, but it'll also help purify the water that's passing through the soil and drainage layer in order to effectively recycle the water within the propagation box. Now it's time to fill the box with substrate. I decided to use some tarantula mix I had kicking around, which is a blend of cypress mulch, peat moss, black earth, and sand. Since most species of moss can grow on various different surfaces, you don't have to be too picky with the substrate you use. Just make sure that the substrate of choice can withstand high levels of humidity. I also added some sphagnum moss to the mix in order to help with moisture retention and just to add a little more volume to the substrate. Since many species of moss grow very well on wood and branches, I decided to use these pieces of cypress mulch to my advantage and place them neatly around the propagation box in hopes that some moss will, over time, grow along the pieces of wood. Next, I sprayed the substrate with some reverse osmosis water. This will help the moss better adapt to the new environment. Now for the fun part, which is placing the moss inside the propagation box. This is a very simple process which doesn't require any specialized planting method. Simply set the moss down on the substrate and press it down a little to make sure it's flush with the soil, and you're good to go. Once all the moss was placed in the propagation box and organized by species, I gave it another quick spray. This step is optional, but I decided to add some springtails to the propagation box. Springtails are tiny invertebrates, and they will serve an important function in this propagation box by breaking down decaying organic matter or mold that may develop over time. Another optional step is to drill a couple holes in the side or on the top of the propagation box in order to allow a little bit of airflow. I knew that this step wouldn't be necessary for me because I have a tendency to obsessively check on my moss. Therefore, I open the lid multiple times a week. If your moss box gets a lot of airflow, you will need to mist it more frequently. Whereas if your moss box receives little to no airflow, it is quite self-sustaining, so you will very rarely need to intervene. I personally keep my propagation box under some LED grow lights, but moss tends to grow very well even in shady conditions, so you can probably just put it next to a window and it'll do just fine. That concludes this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you found it helpful or if you have any comments, be sure to share those down in the comments section. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.